Kate Falcha. Welcome back to Irish Granny Helen. We're doing our Saturday book. We're on the Mothman Prophecies. And this is video number 6. Okay, let's hope I can get through this without like swallowing my tongue or something. Chapter 14, Sideways in Time. So Keel describes a scenario. This is what he has found to be true at the time. You're driving down a deserted highway late at night. You see a flash of light in the sky. It gets closer. You feel a weird tingling. Your car radio, which is turned off, starts emitting loud, weird beeps. The car comes to a halt on its own. You feel an overwhelming sense of terror. And suddenly it's morning. You don't have any memories of what happened. You don't know why the hours passed. You feel exhausted, kind of like a hangover. Your eyes are very sore. You forget all about this. You have a hard time refreshing your memory. Oh, yes, that happened. But then you start being awoken in the middle of the night by nightmares and sweats. You're dreaming about being in a hospital bed or an operating room, and there are figures around you. Keel says that the numbers of this whole set of events reflect 1975, reflect thousands of such incidents of people who report it, but they don't know how many people really go through it because they don't report it. For every report, he said, thousands keep silent. I think that might be an exaggeration, but I think it's valid to say that many people, especially in that time period, felt uncomfortable or worse talking about this at all. I do think, take it with a grain of salt, this book was written a long time ago. I do think things have changed. Maybe, maybe, I don't know. It's hard for me to know because in my circle of friends and acquaintances, we talk about this. People don't always agree, but you're not considered completely insane if you talk about this. So if they begin to have fragments of memory, these people often have what's called confabulations. They're false memories. They'll have some kind of memory, but of monsters or extraterrestrials or spaceships. Now take this with another grain of salt. In fact, invest in a block of salt here. Keel is in agreement with the theory of Jacques Vallée and the theories later, he didn't know her at the time, of Diane Pasulka, that there is something terrestrial going on. He does not for a minute believe this is from another planet. I don't know. I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I really don't know. Depending on the day, depending what I've just read, I might have a different opinion one way or the other. I think it's very difficult. So in my opinion, what's more important is to ask yourself not what, but to ask yourself why. Okay, move forward. So this notion is in mythology and lore through ancient history up till now. You will find a very similar repeated pattern. Stories of changelings, or babies are switched in the middle of the night. Visitations of devils or spirits, fairies, and tricking you. In lore, the visitors would leave a mark, the devil's mark, like a wart or a boil or a birthmark. And you could actually get into trouble with the law if you had something like that on your body. In modern contactees, they often have rashes or red marks or blotches. In lore, people felt a pain in the abdomen, and today they feel that they remember needles in the abdomen. Now, this is talking about a time that was just beginning, where there were many, many, many stories of abductees who were experimented upon, or maybe sampled or examined. Those stories have cooled down. There's not a lot of talk about that anymore. And the understanding is that we've moved to a different time period of contact. In the lore, blood was taken, and actuality, that people remember their skin being scraped or blood being taken. He mentions, and I thought this was really funny, and this is an indication of how long ago this book was written. He says, by the way, your skin has your genetic code, which is an elaborate system of memory. I wrote in the parentheses, duh, but that wasn't understood or well known. Contactees' memories are not clear. And he says the phenomena seem to create screen memories. You won't remember that you encountered some sort of alien obstacle in the road. You'll just remember a gigantic owl. So nothing in the paranormal world is as it seems, is what he says. He clearly believes that this all is terrestrial. Then he goes on to describe and compare a few cases, which I thought would be kind of fun to give you the details. There are a ton of cases elaborated upon in this book, and I can't read all of them. There's just too many, but I try to pick out the fun ones. So this one is a 33-year-old named Eugenio Siragusa from Italy. This happened in 1952 in Italy. He was up early, standing out waiting for a bus to go to work, when he saw a luminous object in the sky. It was zigzagging rapidly, what is that? It grew very bright. It got closer, and he said the closer it got, the more he could see it was like a spinning top. And he began to feel an overwhelming fear. A bright ray came out of it, lit him up. And when it lit him up, the fear lifted. The ray disappeared, and this flying saucer, as he calls it, flew off. And he was shocked in the days that followed to realize that he was undergoing a really serious personality change. He said his voice changed. It was gentler in tone, that he now at the time hears an inner voice that's teaching him geology and cosmology. That's interesting. Also, stories about creation and his former lives. He has continued contact with these entities by ESP. After about 11 years, he knew enough to meet the actual ETs in real life. One night, he felt the sudden urge to go to Mount Etna, as we all do at some point in our lives. And he felt that his car was being driven for him. He kind of a fugue state almost, or like hypnotic state, got into his car, and next thing he knew, he was up the mountain, and didn't stop at the top, but he could walk the rest of the way. At the top, he saw two figures. They were backlit against the moonlight. They were dressed in shiny spacesuits. They were tall, with blonde hair to their shoulders. They wore what looked like gold bracelets on their wrists and ankles. They had luminous belts. They had a metal plate on their chest. He froze in a cold sweat. That's that flight or fight, response. One of these ETs shone a green light on him, and he felt instant serenity. This individual had soft and serene looks. In Italian, they gave him a message. My driveway is out this window, and every time I start to record, my husband has to do something noisy out there. So I apologize if the lawnmower starts or something. So they told him telepathically, we've been waiting for you. Record in your memory what we're going to tell you. And this was a message for governors and those responsible of the earth. There was a reprimand warning all those responsible to stop atomic explosions grant humanity the well-being of true progress, but with justice, freedom, love, and fraternity. And then they told him that they were part of an intergalactic federation and that they go around tutoring many planets. They said they're like big brothers who are worried about us because we have inhuman behavior. So this is in 1962, keep in mind. He said that we're governed by lies, the truth is hidden, crime is glorified, violence often feels necessary, it's manufactured to feel necessary, racism is normalized, and religion is fanaticism. The inevitable consequences of all of this is failed evolution of the human race and resulting planetary catastrophe. All of us here now have collaborated in our past lives with each other to develop humanity. We are all responsible for and to each other. We must prepare ourselves. So this was true in 1962. I wrote, now what's true? Then they told him that they won't permit nuclear war. That's what I was questioning. Because I've also heard in other sources that they will not interfere with free will choice, and they have intervened as much as they possibly can. And I think we need to be very careful. There's a real desire to make these entities, who or whatever they are, to make them our savior. And our savior is within. That is not what's going to save us. It's us connecting to our deeper understanding within and sharing it with each other. There are no saviors. Keel believes this is just a programming effort, programming this Italian man and telling us what we want to hear. I don't know if I want to hear what they said. I'm not sure. So these warnings from the ETs against nukes and nuclear power and nuclear war were widespread in the 50s and 60s. But as our paranoia about nukes subsided, so did these warnings. I would question, did our paranoia subside? He discusses October of 1973, the Pascagoula, Mississippi contact with two fishermen. It's kind of a famous case. He calls it routine hallucinations that attracted more attention than usual. But polygraphs were done on these men who described their encounter, contact, and they passed. Hynek said about this, there's no question in my mind these men have had a terrifying experience. Under no circumstance should they be ridiculed. Let's protect these men. There's an 18-year-old and a 42-year-old. So while fishing, these two guys heard a loud hum. This is the true story of what happened. They saw a bright blue flashing light over the water that was coming closer. And when it really got close enough to see, they saw it was an egg-shaped object. They felt paralyzed. They were scared to death. The 18-year-old was so scared he fainted. The two 5-foot beings exited the object. They had gray wrinkled skin and no necks. They had pointed ears and crab-like claws. They carried the men into the object, and they remember a big eye hovering over them like a scan. They were returned to their fishing spot. They came back to consciousness and went to the sheriff immediately. Afterwards, they had blinding headaches, bad dreams. The older guy had a wound on his arm that opened and bled, and then in a few hours closed up and disappeared. The pier from which they fished and were taken from, actually at the time that this happened, not later, but at this time, had 24/7 naval television on it because the Navy used it. The Navy men observing the feed from the TV saw nothing anywhere during the time that this happened. The older man never wore a watch, and apparently this was really odd for an adult to not wear a watch. He didn't wear one because people said, he couldn't keep one working. And he said people told him that he had electricity coming out of him. I can't wear a watch. I've never been able to wear a watch. Every watch I've ever owned has just stopped working for no good reason. Just stopped working. Keel also asks, did the energy that he had that interfered with watches, did that attract these entities? Parker, the younger guy, he didn't have that energy. He passed out. He couldn't handle any of this. The older guy, he went into trance and hallucinated. This is Keel's evaluation. They both had a lot of media attention. They got a ton of prank phone calls. All of it, the nastiness, the ridicule, the weirdos. Despite the notoriety, they were never investigated by experts except the U.S. Air Force. One engineer hypnotized them, and when they described their terrible fear, he said, it's certain that they were examined by robots from outer space. The Air Force investigator was at Kessler Air Force Base. Kessler, can't read my handwriting. They were surrounded by extreme security when they went there. The whole time they were there, they were examined physically by doctors in white bodysuits, masks, and gloves, who immediately did a radioactivity check on them. The doctors seemed familiar. This seemed like a very experienced protocol that they were using. He said there were brass everywhere, meaning big shots, A heap of doctors. I'm not quite sure how many are in a heap, but a lot of armed air police at every door. The whole base was on alert the whole time they were there. They asked many questions of them, but they were questions like Keel asked. They weren't medical official questions. Questions like, how many cars do you have? That kind of thing. Woody said that they were time travelers, these entities. They said on his space trips, there were time distortions. He said he'd feel that it was a trip of days and he would return to Earth and only a few hours had passed. Keel suggested hallucination, and Woody was adamant that it was time travel. Keel notes that many reports that the entities had trouble with our time. He got these reports from other people, and he notes that you could put a whole pile of these stories together, and everybody talks about the ETs didn't understand our time. Also, their strange language sounded speeded up or slower down, robotic and awkward. It never sounded like it was on the right time, how you can speed sound up on a computer. Their clothes were often anachronistic, old-fashioned, but looked brand new. They used odd old language, like 23 skidoo, that kind of thing. And he asked, are these mistakes really mistakes, or are they intentional? Keel said that this is his most puzzling story, this next story that I'm going to tell you. It happened on Sunday, December 10th, 1967. A student from Adelphi, Maryland, was driving outside of Washington, D.C. His name is Tom. He was on a partially completed highway when he saw the road ahead blocked by a large object, and he thought this is a tractor trailer that had jackknifed because of the construction or something. But then he saw that it was a reflective bone-white egg on 4 legs. Now, this reminds me of Lonnie Zamora's story from New Mexico. I'm just saying. He was terrified to see 2 figures standing outside of this thing on the ground. One walked up to his car, because he had to stop for this obstacle, and had a really inappropriate big grin fixed on his face the whole time, which is really creepy. He was 5 feet 10 inches tall. He was in light blue coveralls. He had thick-soled shoes, weird complexion. Here we go again with this complexion. Nobody ever seems able to really adequately describe it. Nothing familiar, but not right. Dusky is the closest that sounds right, because it almost sounds to me like somebody with a darker complexion, like maybe somebody Hispanic, but also anoxic. There's sort of a gray, brown, but not dark cast to it. It's so hard to describe, but I've read so many descriptions that I almost can see what they mean. And it is hard to give it the right descriptive words, because it's easier to say what it isn't. And he describes them as having thyroid eyes, which is exophthalmia. It's when somebody's got a thyroid problem and their eyes are like, kind of, think Kash Patel. He heard out loud, "Don't be afraid of me." And then he heard Vadig. And then a voice asking normal questions. Then it said, "I'll see you in time." The guy went back and got in and flew off. So Tom got back home and he told his roommates, "Oh my God, you won't believe what happened." And he was right. They didn't believe him at all. He worked as a part-time waiter as he was a student. One night, Vadig was the name of the guy. I forgot to mention that. It was the name of the entity. One night, Vadig came into the restaurant wearing a suit and a black coat. And he asked, "Remember me?" to Tom. And he made arrangements to meet Tom after his next Sunday shift. So he's going to come back on Sunday. "When you're done working, Tom, we're going to get together." I can't believe he agreed to this. Sunday after work, Tom got a ride home. And when he got home, he got a ride from somebody at work. There was a big black car with no lights that glided up to his house, an old Buick, but it looked brand new. And it smelled new inside, he said. Vadig, the guy, and a guy in a gray coat in the car who never spoke were in the car. Tom got in, and it just blows my mind how credulous a lot of these people are. And I wonder if it's part of the hypnotic thing. But he got in, and they drove onto a back road, and they came to an egg-shaped object. They put Tom inside in a circular room, and he was in a bucket seat, and there was a gray TV. The TV screen came alive. The object shuddered. On the screen, he watched the earth recede to a tiny little speck. He felt like 3 or 4 hours passed. They approached a different planet and landed. He was told that this is Lanulos. He got in a wheelless vehicle that moved along a trough in the street, on the ground. They came to a large city with the low, flat buildings and signs in some language that looked like Asian characters of some sort. And this is great. The people were all nude. They gave him a tour. He got back into the egg and went back to Earth. He got into his car and he went home. And as they were parting company, he was told, "I'll see you in time." Tom wanted to wake up his roommates and tell them, but they were still up and they were worried about him. They were waiting for him because he never came in from work. He was shocked. He'd been dropped off by his ride from work at midnight, and it was now 1:30 in the morning. He'd only been gone in Earth hours, fewer than 2 hours. His roommates saw his extreme confusion, and they began to believe that something was going on, that he wasn't just pulling their leg. A month later, Woody was in D.C. for a radio interview about Lanulos, and roommates of Tom and Tom were astounded to hear this. They called the radio station, they talked to Woody, and they arranged to meet him. Keel was in D.C. at the same time. He joined them. He actually said that when he went to this meeting, he thought, okay, Woody is there. He's in cahoots with this kid named Tom. And he's working on some kind of psych project for the university, and they're trying to pull one over on me. But after a long talk with them, he began to realize that he felt Tom was sincere. Tom didn't want publicity, so Keel complied and didn't say anything. But Woody told people, and he pressured Tom into speaking. And so Keel thought, oh, well, okay, he's made it public himself. So he just referred to it in one paragraph in his most recent book at the time, and got an angry letter from Tom and said, now that you've talked about me, I've been pestered and plagued by kooks, and they're driving me crazy. He said, all of what I told you was true, but I wish I'd never told anybody anything. So eventually Tom got married, and he didn't tell her until months after the wedding. I call foul. He should have told her. But there you go. Keel makes the observation in the book about the mobs of crazy people, the harassment of people who speak out, and that it's real. Now, when this book was written, the internet didn't exist. We're all quite familiar with that mob mentality now. Chapter 15, Misery on the Mount. Now, Daniel Drayson, we've mentioned him before. He's from the Public Broadcasting Laboratory. He's the filmmaker who was doing the UFO documentary. I've been working with Keel off and on, going to interviews and stuff. He went to West Virginia to get a film of the lights in the sky to put into the documentary. Keel was in D.C., and he talks about the fact that he parked his car and locked everything up, and when he came back, he found the car windows smashed, and they'd only taken a couple of cameras. He'd left all of his equipment in the car. They took his briefcase, his notebooks, his exposed film, his taped interviews, and a telescope. Anything pertaining to interviews that he'd done. They didn't take his address book. The cops were not sympathetic because he left objects in view in his car. Don't tempt the thieves. Meanwhile, Dan, the documentarian, he saw a lot of lights, but his cameras malfunctioned every time he tried to take pictures. We've heard this story so many times that it's just understood that they're camera shy. It's very hard to get any kind of photography, still or video, moving, of any kind of phenomenon. It's very difficult because it just stops when people point a camera at it, or cameras malfunction, or the film doesn't work, or any combination of technical failures. One small bit of film did survive, but was ruined in the laboratory by developing. So then, and this is really weird, Dan had brought, his crew with him, cameramen, soundmen, that kind of thing. The crew members started having trouble with their phone. A woman production assistant got woken in the middle of the night by a loud beeping. She looked outside. She saw a large luminous sphere, and this is in like residential apartment area of Brooklyn. So Dan went back for a second time to Point Pleasant, and he found witnesses that Keel had missed and more Men in Black reports that Keel had missed. Somebody talked about mysterious unmarked panel trucks that were driving around the Black Hills with guys in coveralls that were doing something with phone and electric lines, but they didn't work for the phone company. There's another story. At the same time, a woman in British Columbia, this is Canada, on an island north of Vancouver, Keats Island. She was living in a one-room cabin. This story this blew my mind. She obviously did not watch Dateline. So she's living in this one-room cabin in a very isolated area in 1967, and she saw UFO lights every night. In January of 68, she saw a long dark body with red and yellow lights at both ends in the sky. Soon after that, two guys in coveralls, like within a couple of days, two guys in coveralls who seemed to be employees of the hydroelectric company offered to help her put up her stovepipe, on the roof of her cabin. She said, okay. She does not watch Dateline. Okay, and the younger one kept calling the older one Master. So after they put up this thing, she invited them in for tea, of course. She said they were very stiff. But after they left, she wondered how they knew that she was there, because that cabin was not visible at all. It was in the woods, far from a road. Nobody could see it, hidden by the trees. The older guy returned in May with a different younger guy. While walking the path near the cabin, nobody was speaking. The younger guy stared at her like she was some kind of freak. And their walking was odd, she said. It was slow, careful, uncertain. They watched their feet the whole time. The next day, a Jeep with 4 ordinary workmen came, saying they were inspecting lines for the hydroelectric company. And they told her, we didn't have any workers in this area. Somebody has been pulling your leg. Keel heard the stories from West Virginia and Long Island that were very similar. Stories about 3 guys, sometimes 4. They all had weird complexions. They told one woman that they were coming to take tribal land away, which freaked her out. They had no car, and they must have walked despite the muddy hill that the story of this one individual. The hills were muddy and wet, but their feet were dry and clean. They had fancy shoes on. They looked brand new. Then there were reports on Mount Misery of a gray-haired woman with a giant ledger going door to door, asking weird questions, claiming she was for the local paper, but the paper later denied it. Miss J. Parrow, she was with Babylon, New York radio show. She was doing a film, episode about the history and psychic lore of the area. She reported on UFO sightings around New Jersey's Mount Misery. She began getting prank calls at work and at home. A metallic voice would say, "Meet me on the mountain." And of course, she at least had some sense. She didn't go. Keel met many contactees from Long Island. Jane, who was not a reader, Jane is this other person who was not a reader, didn't know about UFOs at all, was not religious. She seemed almost mystical to Keel. He never explained what that meant. I don't know what he meant by that. But she had been contacted. Mount Misery had, on the mountain, was the former estate of Henry Stimson, the World War II Secretary of War. Stimson was the name of the freeway in San Francisco. I think I'm right. The Stimson Freeway collapsed during that terrible Loma Prieta earthquake in 89. I'm trying to remember the dark ages. Remember the pancaked? So he was the Secretary of War during World War II. This mountain was called Haunted. It was known to be haunted. It had a lot of mysterious deaths and disappearances on it. Low UFOs have been seen. Hairy monsters with red glowing eyes have been seen. After Parrow's show, this is Jay Parrow, the woman on the radio, she got mobs of UFO hunters and the curious who were disturbing the very snobby, rich residents scattered around this mountain, including Jane and her boyfriend who got bothered. So one night they went up there to, I guess, to see if they could see what she'd seen before, because she was contacted before. And they ended up alone on a road behind the Stimson place. By the way, the name of this place was the High Hold. Her boyfriend, Richard, suddenly felt sick and he slumped unconscious in the car. By a beam of light that shot out of the woods like a floodlight, she was dazzled, and it paralyzed her. And the next thing she knew, they were driving at the bottom of the mountain. What happened? They went home and they never discussed it. Okay. A few days later, Jane got a strange metallic voice call. Listen carefully. I cannot hear you. Go to the library and get this particular book on Native history. So she did. May 18th at 10:30 in the morning, she went to the library, and it was completely empty except for the librarian, who was wearing an outfit from the 1940s, had a strange complexion, had black hair. She gave Jane the exact book, told her the library had been holding it for her, but she hadn't called. How did they know? This is very odd. Jane turned to page 42 as the caller told her to do. You won't believe this, she told Keel. But as I was looking at the book, the print got smaller and smaller and larger and larger. It changed into a message, and these were the words. It said, "Good morning, friend. You have been selected for many reasons. One is that you are advanced in autosuggestion. Through this science, we will make contact. I have messages concerning Earth and its people. The time is set. Fear not, I am a friend. For reasons best known to ourselves, you must make your contacts known to one reliable person. To break this code is to break contact. Proof shall be given. Notes must be kept of the suggestion state. Be in peace. Signed, a pal." Then she says the print became very small and the normal text reappeared. She left, she went home, she got ill, and she vomited for 2 days. Then she went and told Pero her story. And Pero said, "Oh, you got to call Keel." So Keel was intrigued. Was Jane programmed for experiences? He kept in touch and he recorded everything that she told him. Earlier in June, Jane began to see that weird librarian everywhere. Her clothes were always odd. Her speech was broken English. She had a weird laugh like an emotionally disturbed person. I don't know what that means. She asked Jane, "Is there any gold here?" Out of the blue, like gold in the ground type gold. Jane didn't understand any of this. Keel, when he heard about gold, she actually, I'm reading this like somebody who studied biology. What she said to Jane, "Is there any AU here?" Jane didn't know what she was talking about, but Keel knew that AU is the scientific notation for gold. He had just been studying gold and religious lore, Nero's Golden Palace, the Domus Aurea, AU. Next day, Jane got up early, took a walk early in the morning, and a woman came out of an alley and said, "Peter is coming." Jane was shook up. As a former Roman Catholic, she knew the lore that the last pope would be named Peter. I don't know why that came to mind, but that's what came to mind. The woman said, "Why are you interested in our mount? Peter is coming very soon." Then a big black Cadillac drove up, a brand new old-fashioned black Cadillac, driven by a weird complexioned guy in wraparound sunglasses in a neat gray suit that was the same fabric as the woman that had been in the alley. The guy was 5'8" tall with weird skin, almond-shaped eyes, huge, like big almond-shaped eyes. He climbed out of the back and acted very important. He was in this fancy tailored gray suit. Looked like silk, but it wasn't silk. They shook hands. His was ice cold. He said, "Do you know who I am? My name is Apple." And now it's not spelled like apple, but it's pronounced like apple. So all the way through, I've just written apple like the fruit. He gave her a piece of paper And he says, wear this always so they will know you. And she asked him, who's they? He said, they are the very good people. The paper was a parchment. It was old with a metal disc the size of a quarter. So this is interesting. She walked to the post office. She said, I'm not going to wear this. I'm going to mail it. And she went to the post office and got an envelope and mailed it to Keel. The two strangers, the guy and the woman, just smiled at each other. They didn't stop her. Apple told her things about her childhood that nobody could have known. He told her, avoid iodine. She had health issues and wasn't supposed to take iodine for whatever reason. The car came and they got into it and it drove off. Jane felt woozy and strange, like in a daze. The envelope got to Keel, but it had been opened. The disc was like a blank, like a pet tag without engraving. The paper looked like part of an old envelope. So he put it all back together. He taped the envelope shut, put it into a manila envelope, and mailed it back to Jane. The next day she called him and she asked him, why did you bend the disc up and tear the paper into 3 pieces? And so the tag now was bent in half, black, and smelled like rotten eggs. But the outside of the manila envelope didn't look like it had been opened. So they were just very confused. Meanwhile, Jay Parrow, the radio woman, met a weird woman in her office at 3:30 on June 11th, 1967. A 6-foot-tall, large, glassy-eyed, gasping, wheezing woman came into the office. She said, I am Princess Moon Owl. I am from another planet. I came here by flying saucer. So Jay saw gold when she recognized gold when she saw it, and she taped this to put on air. The princess was delighted and to be interviewed on radio and gave her 30 minutes, a hilarious monologue about life on her planet Ceres in the asteroid belt. She was familiar with Long Island, New York. She said UFOs are phonies, some of them, and praised others. She stank of rotten eggs. She claimed that she was 7,000 gots old, and that's 350 years. And as this aired, Keel got a huge number of weird calls where there was nobody on the line when the phone rang. That afternoon, he got a call from Princess Moon Owl. He could reach her through Parrow, but the voice was different from the voice on tape. The taped voice was like a man faking a Southern accent, like a bad actor, like it was a hoax. He says like it was a hoax or a possession. Jay aired it on her radio program, and as she put it, the Long Island lunatic fringe went wild with joy. The princess began calling all Long Island UFO enthusiasts on the phone. They all accepted that she was authentic. Keel said, how did you get the unlisted numbers? That was what he was more concerned about. He worried it was a hoax because it was an upcoming UFO convention in New York, and he thought, is this some kind of PR stunt? Meanwhile, Jane was still getting a visitor who told her secret information that Keel had, like things about the Christiansons and Tiny that he had told nobody. Previous videos. On June 12th, Mr. Apple and friends came to Jane while she was home alone. They asked for water. They took pills. They gave her 3 pills. Now this challenges belief. They handed her 3 pills. They said, take one now, take another in 2 days, get the 3rd analyzed so you know it's harmless. Wouldn't you do that first? She took the first pill. 2 hours later, she got a blinding headache. Her eyes were bloodshot. She lost vision in her right eye. Her parents came home and they were worried because her eyes were glassy and the right eye didn't look okay. Keel says that later they tested the 3rd pill. It was a sulfa drug that's used for urinary tract infections. 2 days later, she took the 2nd pill. And after she took it, her phone rang, and there was somebody with a Brooklyn accent who identified as Colonel John Dalton of the Air Force, and he wanted to discuss Mitchell Field. She didn't know what that meant, He wanted her to come to his office, but then he said, no, let's not do it at my office. Let's do it at your house. She didn't report anything to the Air Force before this phone call. So how did he know about her? How did he know her phone and her address? At 7:45, her parents were still out, and Colonel Dalton and a young guy with him rang the bell. She let them in. They seemed very normal and polite. The colonel was in street clothes, a black suit. The lieutenant, the younger guy, was in a uniform. He had a crew cut, but it seemed to be dyed. They both flashed IDs, but it was a quick look. The colonel asked, did she know about local UFO ET reports? And she laughed and said, I don't believe in flying saucers. Dalton told her they knew about the funny people that were coming in and out of her house. And she said, oh, my relatives are all strange. They wanted her to fill out a long form with lots of questions about personal history, but she refused. He said, well, then just sign the form without filling it out. And she said, well, that would be stupid. And they gave up and they left. They left in a blue station wagon. At the same time, Mary Hyre was visited, the exact same time. She was visited by men in black with dyed blonde hair. They were only interested in personal questions. And when they were leaving, they said, we'll see you in time. And this was 6 months before Keel got Thomas's story. And the phrase didn't mean anything to Mary when she told Keel, because he hadn't heard it from Thomas yet. June 19th, Mr. Apple gave Jane a message for Keel. The message was, things will become more serious in the Middle East. The Pope will go there soon on a peace mission. Now, for the sake of YouTube, I just want to make this really clear that this is a prediction made in 1960. Well, the late 1960s. It's a prediction made to the author of a book. This is not me talking about real life today. So what he said to Jane was, things will become more serious in the Middle East. The Pope will go there soon on a peace mission. He will be martyred there in a horrible way, knifed in a bloody manner. Then the Antichrist will rise up out of Israel. She was shocked. Here was a statement that would be checked against future events. Apple also said the Vatican was planning to send food and material to Arab refugees. There had been no announcement of this in the press. So, kind of remarkable that that stuff is still going on, huh? 2 days later, Jay Perro was approached by a black Cadillac while walking at 8 p.m. A well-dressed man in the back ordered her into the car. So, of course, what did she do? She got in the car. And they drove to Mount Misery. There was a funny smell in the car, like a hospital, she said, which makes me wonder about, chloroform. There were flashing lights on the dashboard. She couldn't take her eyes off of it. She felt hypnotized by these flashing lights. Okay. They came to a deserted rural crossroad. They met another car, and the guy was standing beside it with a doctor's bag. He got in the car with Jane. He waved something in her face. She became paralyzed. She heard the guys asking her nonsensical questions. Then they returned her to the place where they picked her up while she was walking. She was terrified. She went in the house and called Keel. Keel recalled old stories. Let's see here. Okay, we're talking old. Spring-heeled Jack, a caped phantom with a bright light on his chest who appeared in England in the 1830s. He could leap great distances. He spewed a nauseous gas into the faces of surprised witnesses. He was the subject of a massive manhunt, never caught or identified. A black-garbed phantom terrorized Mattoon, Illinois in the 1940s, spraying a noxious gas into bedroom windows. Later, Keel wondered, was Tom gassed in Vodding's Buick. Keel refers to October 23rd, 1971, a Washington Post article where Richard Nixon's maid, oh, this is a great story. Richard Nixon's maid was arrested for shoplifting dresses in a Key Biscayne store. When she was arrested, she claimed she was put into a hypnotic trance by a stranger and told to go shoplift the dresses. In court, she pled no contest, and law enforcement and the psychiatrist testified that they felt she was telling the truth. She got a suspended sentence. She describes a woman came up to her in the parking lot and released a jasmine scent. She said, "I lost my will. It was terrifying." The woman ordered her to steal the dresses and bring them to the woman. She had top security clearance to work in the Florida White House and an impeccable FBI background check. Psychiatry found that she was quickly and easily hypnotized. She said it was different with the woman. After it, she said she didn't remember anything. It was like sleepwalking, only while awake. Keel notes that the power failed everywhere that LBJ went. Now, we're not talking about Nixon's secretary anymore. Jane kept getting these weird warnings about the Pope. Now, this is, for the sake of YouTube, this is from 1967. These are alleged warnings from extraterrestrials. These are not my words. I'm not saying these are true. They had a dire prophecy for Pope Paul. He would be attacked in a crowd at an airport by a man dressed in a black suit wielding a black knife, and his assassination there would be 3 days of darkness after and worldwide power failures. Now, this was going to be happening in 1967, was this prediction. Then the Vatican announced that they were going to assist Cairo war victims and refugees. They'd already predicted this, right? Keel tried to hypnotize Jane, and she started channeling Mr. Apple. He wanted to talk about Marilyn Monroe and RFK Sr. He warned that RFK Sr. was in grave danger. He told Keel also about future plane crashes. There's no follow-up on that. So, meanwhile, Jane's phone kept ringing like crazy. And there was nobody ever there, so Keel took it off the hook. Suddenly, Jane woke up out of her trance, which is not normal in hypnosis, and then the plane crashes started happening. Keel would think of a question, and Jane would immediately call Keel with an answer from Apple. So some kind of telepathic communication is being implied here. Let me see how much more. This is a long chapter. Okay. I don't think we're going to be able to. Oh, no, it's not. It's right in front of me. So anyway, we get these answers from Apple. Other ufologists were getting ET predictions too. Gray Baker was told that a famous Midwest newsman would die soon. 2 days later, a well-known newscaster and author of the book Flying Saucers Are Serious Business, a guy called Frank Edwards, he dropped dead of a heart attack in Indiana. Keel still believed that contactees were being manipulated to spread a false frame of reference. So that's the end of that chapter, and this is a perfect time to stop. I didn't see the end of the chapter because, well, it was right in front of me. All right, so that's the end of video number 6. And we will start with number 7 next. Let me know what you think of this book. And if you're still listening, I'm not getting very many people viewing these books, and it's getting kind of disheartening because this is a lot of work. I would read these books anyway, but it's the note-taking that's really time-consuming. And I don't know if these books really are worth doing, because hardly anybody is listening to them. Let me give you an example. So I'm recording this ahead of time because stuff going on. So I'm going to tell you how many views my more recent book that I did garnered. 67 views, which is ludicrous. And if it means so much to those 67 people, then I would keep doing the books for the foreseeable future. But if I don't hear that this really is of interest, then what are we doing here? Yeah. And I'm trying very hard to switch up stories. So we've done religious corruption and weird paranormal phenomenon and a little bit of philosophy, and got another one coming up. Where did it go? Oh, well, Paul Wallace. But we're going to be talking about NDEs. So I'm trying really hard to mix up the subject matter. You need to let me know. If nobody really responds and nobody really cares, I might think twice about pursuing this into the new year, because it's a lot of work. I'm not getting any younger. All right. Thank you. If you're still here, you're not the people I need to be talking to. I shouldn't be chastising you. So thank you. Thank you for watching. I'm glad if you appreciate this. This book is crazy. This is something else, isn't it? Slungafoil. It's lunch. Make sure you're signed up.